Well, you lucky students, you got to learn all about coding and categorization and grounded theory and qualitative data analysis, and I'm sure you are just hungry for more. So here we are. We're going to summarize everything that we learned, and hopefully this will be a helpful recap for you to keep all of this straight, because we did cover a lot of ground in this series. So first of all, qualitative data analysis is ultimately about extracting actionable insights from often voluminous quantities of data. And guys, when I am doing a qualitative study, I'm often looking at dozens or hundreds of pages of text when it's all said and done. It is a lot of data. And it's not easy to summarize it. It's not easy to put it into a method in which it's useful to an end user without requiring them to read everything as well. So the work that's required as an analyst is significant because we're trying to take something that is very detailed and nuanced and contextual and rich and oftentimes very interesting and turn it into something that's distilled down to what a client can ultimately use to support their decision, to enhance their understanding, to take this information and put it into action in some way. So the reason that we go through all this, the reason that we do all of this is so we can get beyond just the collection and dissemination of data and into the action. The second thing that we need to remember is how we translate our data into a written form that can be analyzed has a huge impact on how qualitative insights can be gleaned. And this is true both in terms of the type of transcription that we're using or the type of tool that we're using for collecting data. And it can also be true for ultimately how we're going to analyze our data because different written forms require different types of analysis and different kinds of assumptions about what we're going to do with the data. So we have to be very thoughtful and careful that what we're using is something that we're ultimately going to be able to work with to draw insights from. The third thing is there's no single best practice for categorization and coding of qualitative data. And what you do ultimately depends on what you hope to learn from the data. And again, I have 3 videos that are going to follow this that show you 3 different methods, and they are 3 of many. There are so many others out there, and I don't want to claim that any one is right or that it's widely used because everyone has different ways of doing this. But what it ultimately boils down to is, can you as a researcher explain your data in a way that is useful to the end user? And if you can, then you did it right. There's always ways to do it better, but as long as you can explain your data, you've done something correctly. The fourth thing is grounded theory, and that is a tool that you can use to bring a certain level of legitimacy and rigor to your qualitative data analysis, provided you have the time and dedication to see it through. And if you remember that chart I put up, it is a detailed process, but it's worthwhile, especially if you're working with a large body of qualitative data, to go through that process because what you're going to result in presenting is something that's really well grounded in the data that you collected and not in your own interpretation of said data. With all that said, I'll just take you back to this image that I've used in every one of these lectures. And it's almost a little painful to me to remember what it's like to wear glasses because I had LASIK surgery a few years ago. And, you know, the reason I had LASIK surgery was because I wore glasses for most of my life and I never liked them. And I wore contact lenses when I didn't want to wear my glasses and I didn't like them. I just wanted to be able to see clearly. I like being able to look out my window and see the leaves rustling on the trees. I like being able to read signs from far away. I like being able to see my children's faces when they are across the field from me. I enjoy being able to see. And I think that's one reason that I really do enjoy qualitative research because unlike quantitative research where I'm often looking at things that are kind of abstract and which have been translated into numbers that I have to interpret through my understanding of what those numbers mean. With qualitative data, it's a lot more about context. It's a lot more about getting a chance to really wrap your arms around something and getting to know it and getting to understand it and getting to love it. But it does require looking at it in different ways. It does require having different lenses that you can put on. And so the more I can train my eyes to do that naturally, the more I can train my eyes to be able to see what's really hidden inside the data that I've collected, not only is it more efficient for me as a researcher to then turn that into something that my clients can ultimately use, but it's also just more rewarding because I'm able to get past those really superficial readings of the data, able to get past my reactions to the stories and the anecdotes, able to get past the salacious stuff and really dig into what the themes are, what the important ideas are, what the actions can be, and the applications of the data. And that is well worth it. So for me, having a pair of glasses was great. It allowed me to see the world better, but having LASIK was even better because it allows me to see the world all the time without having to rely on just one set of lenses. And I hope that as you have learned about these tools, that you kind of thought about, it'd be great to be able to train my eyes to have those techniques as well, have those perspectives and those insights available to me without necessarily needing to reach for a pair of corrective lenses every time I'm looking at something. And I'll just tell you, it can be done, and it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of dedication, but it is worth your time. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this series, and don't forget to check out the coding videos.